The Korean War from 1950 to 1953 unleashed gruesome horror onto the Korean Peninsula, often referred to as the Forgotten War. This conflict led to napalm attacks, bombs, destruction of villages, 1.2 million battle deaths, and approximately 3 million civilian deaths. In many respects, it was a conflict of the Cold War. After World War II, an artificial border was drawn between the 38th parallel. World powers divided the formerly Japanese-occupied Korea into two states. The North, supported by the Soviet Union and China, embraced communism. The South, supported by the US and other Western countries, implemented capitalism. While the Cold War has long since finished, political tensions still brew between North Korea and South Korea. The fighting ended in 1953 with an armistice, not a peace treaty, so the war has technically not ended. As a result, North Korea over the years has developed intercontinental ballistic missiles with warheads that have nuclear capabilities. Simultaneously, the United States and South Korea have conducted joint military exercises at the border with North Korea. These annual military exercises, such as Fall Eagle, include approximately 300,000 US and Republic of Korea troops. It includes head of state decapitation drills, the testing of 50 wartime aircrafts, and other war simulations. US and South Korean military drills, often described as war games, have been routinely criticized by the North Korean regime. At times, North Korea has even threatened retaliatory measures as a response to what head of state Kim Jong Un characterizes as a practice invasion on his country. Some political analysts believe the military exercises are an unnecessary provocation of North Korea, while other analysts consider the military exercises as an effective deterrent against North Korean military aggression. Ultimately, both sides of this debate agree on the same goal: to avoid the event of a second Korean War. Today, more than 74 million people live in the Korean Peninsula. A repetition of the 1950s war would be devastating. For example, Seoul, South Korea's capital, holds approximately 9 million people and is easily within striking range of a missile from North Korea. Japanese cities such as Tokyo, as well as other US territories like Guam and the state of Hawaii, are also considered within striking distance. This short video essay will elaborate on the arguments for each side of this controversy and reach an informed conclusion as to whether joint military exercises are an unnecessary provocation or a necessary policy for stability. Since the peace armistice ended the fighting of the Korean War, US and South Korean joint military exercises have consistently been a component of our defense strategy. There have been few instances where these military exercises have been canceled to engage in diplomacy. One example was during the 1994 Korean nuclear crisis, when the US and North Korean tensions reached a dangerous level. However, currently, we are living through one of those periods in time. President Trump and South Korean President Moon Jae-in agreed to postpone military exercise entitled Fall Eagle during the 2018 Winter Olympics. These were held in Pyeongchang which is about 60 miles south of the demilitarized zone. After a newfound willingness for cooperation, Trump's Singapore summit with North Korean head of state Kim Jong Un in the summer of 2018 led to the United States' indefinite suspension of the joint military exercises. In return, Kim Jong Un destroyed one of his own nuclear testing sites. This trend towards peace is an impressive turn of events. Did the cancellation of the joint military exercises take an important role in this development? Was the decision an unwarranted concession on the part of the U.S.? I argue that the joint military exercises are provocative and cause unnecessary instability in the peninsula. It's important to consider how the joint military exercises are perceived by North Korea. The North Korean regime has openly described the military exercises as provocative and a source of retaliation against its enemy forces. On its face value, this response on its own can answer the question proposed by this video. However, this analysis will determine the validity of arguments by considering a wide range of historical context and statistics. Argument 1. The sheer scale of the military exercises are enough to suggest to the North Korean regime that the policy is an action of military aggression instead of military defense. Kim Jong Un argues that the exercises are a practice invasion, which in turn justifies his nuclear weapon buildup. Let's review the military exercises in more detail to see if this claim has any validity. Before Trump indefinitely suspended these exercises, the U.S.-South Korean drills included Key Resolve, Foal Eagle, Soaring Eagle, and Ulchi Freedom Guard. As mentioned earlier, these exercises consist of 300,000 total troops, 17,000 of those troops coming from the U.S. Here, the U.S. ROK Operation Plan, or O-Plan, is rehearsed in preparation of an imminent attack from North Korea. This preemptive strike strategy aims to eliminate North Korea's capabilities of launching weapons of mass destruction by decapitating the military's leadership, namely Kim Jong Un. For this purpose, the joint military exercises include U.S. Special Warfare Forces, such as SEAL Team 6, the group that carried out the assassination of Osama bin Laden. Additionally, a U.S. imported technology, the Thermal High Altitude Area Defense, is a defense system that is tested by intercepting practice missiles. The U.S. also sends its Nimitz-class nuclear-powered supercarrier called the USS Carl Vinson. The Air Force counterattack aircrafts in these exercises total at around 50 jets. These include F-35B stealth fighters, F-15Ks, and FA-50s. Aircrafts practice striking North Korea's time-sensitive targets, such as missile launching facilities. When it comes to ground force exercises, Foal Eagle's amphibious attacks practice a potential beach invasion on North Korean territory, using military vehicles built for both land and sea. Apart from this, it's important to consider that North Korean military is outspent by the South Korean forces by a ratio of over 4-1. So, in conclusion, the sheer scale of the exercises can easily give the impression that the U.S. and South Korean forces are acting aggressively, not defensively. The second argument considers the United States' actions in Libya. Analysts have described North Korea's nuclear weapons as their insurance policy because of the United States' actions in the Middle East. Similar to North Korea, both Iraq and Libya suffered tense relationships with the United States, with threats of weapons of mass destruction on the line. As a diplomatic concession to improve relationships with the United States, both Iraqi President Saddam Hussein and Libya's Muammar Gaddafi gave up their nuclear capabilities. Regardless of this concession, the United States organized a toppling of regime in both countries. White House officials have evoked Libya when discussing negotiations with North Korea, and have given Pyongyang credible reason to fear they will face a similar fate, a phenomenon which only causes North Korea to distrust the United States more. National Security Advisor John Bolton claimed that the, quote, Libyan model would be an effective method of persuading North Korea to follow the United States' demands. Similarly, Vice President Mike Pence threatened that North Korea would end up like Libya if it did not negotiate correctly. It's also important to consider Dan Coats, President Trump's Director of National Security. During an interview with Lester Holt, he remarked that Kim Jong Un's constant nuclear escalation has been due in part to the United States' regime change foreign policy in Libya. So, in conclusion with this argument, because of previous U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, and because of aggressive rhetoric by United States officials that evoke Libya, the North Korean regime can easily interpret the military exercises as an aggressive action. Counter-arguments will claim that the joint military exercises are a stabilizing force and successfully deter the North Korean regime from launching a nuclear attack on South Korea. However, it's important to note that the North Korean regime has openly condemned the military exercises and threatened retaliatory measures as a result. This face value claim can be supported by the fact that, generally speaking, North Korea's nuclear capacities have steadily increased since the end of the Korean War. If Korean capabilities are a metric we use to determine the level of peace and security in the peninsula, the past half-century has demonstrated that military exercises are not an effective peace policy. Additionally, the strongest counter-arguments hold that the cancellation of joint military exercises is an ineffective peace strategy because of fear that North Korea will become more emboldened to military aggression as a result. However, this assessment is flawed for various reasons. In recent years, the North Korean government has stated that since their nuclear weapon arsenal has reached respectable capabilities in the eyes of the world powers, their government will embark on a peace initiative with South Korea. Because these are mere face value declarations, although significant, it is essential to analyze concrete steps North Korea has taken to advance in this regard. North Korea's signs of following through with their peace initiative are the following. Firstly, in 2015, North Korea took the initiative to offer dismantling their own nuclear capabilities in exchange for the United States to end their joint military exercises at the border. However, then President Barack Obama refused this offer by arguing that North Korea should instead take initial steps to denuclearize. Secondly, Kim Jong Un has recently routinely met with both South Korean and United States leaders to call for peace. This includes crossing the border onto South Korean territory to meet South Korean President Moon Jae-in. Thirdly, North Korea has signed multiple peace negotiations which call for a de-escalation of nuclear weapons in the Korean Peninsula. Among these are the Pyongyang Declaration and the Panmunjom Declaration. Fourthly, the North Korean government destroyed their Punggye-ri nuclear test site shortly before Kim Jong Un and President Donald Trump met for the Singapore summit. As mentioned earlier, the arguments assume that North Korea will become emboldened to use their military aggressively after the United States and South Korea military drills are canceled. However, during the 1994 Korean nuclear crisis, the suspension of the joint military exercise entitled Team Spirit led to the North Korean Agreed Framework. This is a denuclearization treaty between the United States and North Korea. The agreement was ultimately broken in 2003 when George W. Bush described North Korea as part of the, quote, axis of evil in a State of the Union address. However, the situation demonstrated that suspending joint military exercises can serve as a de-escalation mechanism. Lastly, it's important to bring up the point that the US-South Korean military exercises are definitely not the last line of defense when it comes to the United States and South Korean alliance. Without the joint military exercises, the US military continues to have a large presence in the Korean Peninsula. As of the summer of 2018, South Korea held 24,000 United States troops and military personnel. United States military bases in South Korea include U.S. Army Garrison Humphreys, Yongsan in Seoul, Camp Walker in Daegu, Air Force bases in Osan and Kunsan, and Navy bases in Busan and Jinhae. If North Korea were to renege on its path towards peace, the United States and South Korean military alliance would continue to have vast amount of resources at their disposal. In the past century, the Korean Peninsula has seen destruction and suffering as a result of war. As Americans, we are all involved in the well-being of this region. However, the goal of our foreign policy should ultimately serve the interests of the Korean people. So, it is important to consider our actions in Korea as informed and publicly engaged stakeholders. I hope you enjoyed this video essay, and I hope you found this perspective compelling.